worship. I worship God. God. And Jesus is my Savior.
You know what? This might be the one time that I actually will back her. I believe that she does not worship Donald Trump, because if she did, she would probably look more like this.
I don't worship President Trump. And I'm really sick and tired of the bullshit annex I have to deal with constantly from the Democrats.
I'm sick and tired of this bullshit! Jesus Christ is my Savior. Hi, my name is Reese Waters, and I'm troubled. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the page. Jasmine Crockett tried to tell you.
Bleach blonde, bad built butch body.
Sorry, my bad. That was the wrong video. I mean the other one.
Unfortunately, there has been this situation with Marjorie where she is a bully, and no one ever responds. And so the idea was she would just get away with it again. And for me, correct, she basically just mimics Trump.
Now, I covered her trip to The View right here. The link is in the description. Marjorie is a bully, and they refuse to check her, which is exactly why she's actively destroying the GOP's ability to do, well, anything. Dr. Fauci appeared on Capitol Hill this week, and we got a look at what it's like when she's allowed to run unchecked.
Mr. Fauci, you were quoted on CBS Face the Nation saying it's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci?
I am a scientist who uses the scientific method to gain information.
Yes, you said you represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No, that's not a yes or no answer.
Yes, it's a yes or no.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, we'll take that as a you don't know what you represent.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, do you know what you represent? Huh? You have any idea? You have any idea what you represent? Because the lapel on your pen says GOP, but they wouldn't save you if it was just you and Nancy Pelosi left on a boat, okay? So do you know what you represent? That is a question for you. And I also need to ask and hold responsible the person that's making all of these aids that she had. Who was it at Kinko's that made all these for Marjorie Taylor Greene? You didn't know this was going to be used for evil? Look, a wise man once said that evil flourishes when good men do nothing. Marjorie Taylor Greene came to you with all these visual aids, and you didn't know something was amiss?
But this, as director of the NIH, you did sign off on these so-called scientific experiments. And as a dog lover, I want to tell you this is disgusting and evil.
Well, as a dog lover, boy, do I have some news for you about what's going on in the Dakotas. Somebody who you may have seen at Mar-a-Lago going in and out in Christie Nome. Oh, wait, that's right. You ain't invited to Mar-a-Lago no more.
What you signed off on and these experiments that happened to beagles paid for by the American taxpayer. And I want you to know Americans don't pay their taxes for animals to be tortured like this. So the type of science that you are representing, Mr. Fauci, is abhorrent, and it needs to stop. Mr. Fauci, you also represent the type of science that where you confess that you made up the COVID rules, including 6 feet social distancing and masking of children.
I never said I made anything up.
You admitted that you made it up. You made it up as you went.
I made it up.
So are you saying this is fake news, Mr. Fauci?
I didn't say I made anything up.
What did you say?
I said that it is not based in science and it just appeared.
But this is science.
What does dogs have to do with anything that we're talking about today?
These are scientific experiments.
Now, if you recall, the original 6B video popped out because Marjorie Taylor Greene decided that she wanted to talk about Judge Merchan and his daughter, which raised the question from the back, do you know why you're here? If you recall, that started at do you know why you're here? Once again, Marjorie Taylor Greene has no idea why she's here. She has no, do you know how mad I would be if I had to be one of her coworkers and listen to this nonsense. I mean, really. And you wonder why don't nobody want to sit next to her.
What does dogs have to do with anything that we're talking about today?
These are scientific experiments. This is what you signed off on.
First of all, get a look at the dude. The dude next to Fauci can't even stop laughing. He can't even stop laughing. The man knows he's on camera and he can't help himself. I've been there. It's been a couple times when I was in church and somebody tried a solo that really had no business holding the mic. And, you know, sometimes joy just escapes the body and you can't keep it in.
Especially when the NIH and these government agencies, most powerful agencies in our country, are recommending medical suggestions and advice and making up guidelines like 6 feet distancing and masking of children. Do you think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor, you're Mr. Fauci in my few minutes. No, I don't need your answer.
Now, what you saw right there was instructive. She's not actually having a conversation. She is doing a monologue. What she is doing right now is performance theater. Exactly the kind of thing that has chased away multiple members of the GOP that refuse to be a part of this nonsense. You see an example of it right here, and this is only going to continue as long as she refuses to accept or they refuses to actively come get her. If you refuse to come get her, this is exactly who you are and what your caucus has become.
I want to talk about this right here.
Mr. Chairman,
Fauci,
objection.
I reclaim my time. I reclaim my time, Mr. Raskin.
Gentlelady will suspend.
Can the rest of us reclaim our time? I mean, can the rest of us reclaim our time? And I will direct this to the state of Georgia. This is on you. Can the rest of the country reclaim our time?
Mr. Chairman,
Point of order.
just in terms of the rules of decorum, are we allowed to deny that a doctor is a doctor just because we don't want him to be a doctor?
Yes, because in my time, that man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked, and he belongs in
Gentlelady will
prison.
suspend.
So here you have a woman without qualifications to be a doctor, without qualifications to be a scientist, without qualifications to sit in Congress telling somebody else that they don't have the qualifications to become a doctor. And if that is in 2024, I don't know what is.
The gentlelady should recognize the doctor as a doctor.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, is this what we have become? Is this what we have devolved into? No decorum.
You know what? We can do that hearing about the poor men that were injected with syphilis because I support you in that. That's horrific.
I one day want to have the complete lack of self-reflection that Marjorie Taylor Greene represents. She was just asked, is this what we've become? Is this what we've become? And she just goes full-throated, full force in the direction that she was going anyway. I mean, the level of complete unawareness, situational awareness that it takes to be able to just charge forward. I mean, the things I could accomplish. I mean, really, like if I didn't have to be bothered by disgusting everyone around me, I'd be a superstar right now.
In plastic bubbles because of your science, your repulsive, evil science. And let's go back to your very own email. You said earlier you don't use email. Oh, you do. Right here. This is your own email where you said the typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out virus. I do not recommend that you wear a mask. This is your email. This is your own words. But yet children all over America were forced to wear masks. Healthy children forced to wear masks, muzzled in their schools.
Did somebody say muzzle? Huh? Somebody said muzzle? Yeah, over here. Yeah, over here. Yeah, take it up to Congress. Yeah, take that one up to Congress. Is it a large? You got to get a large. You're probably going to have to get a shoulder harness too, because this shoulder's kind of strong.
And then they were forced to learn from home because of your so-called science and your medical suggestions, while you and all your cronies get paid from Big Pharma. You know that what this committee should be doing? We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
Now, wait a minute. I could have sworn they spent the last week talking about the partisan criminal justice system, wasn't it? Wasn't that them? Wasn't it? I could have sworn ever since the Trump verdict, it was all about weaponizing our judicial system. I could have sworn. But you know what? They didn't invite her to that's right. I forgot. That's my bad. They don't invite her to the briefings and they don't give her the talking points. She just off on her own. I forgot. This all makes perfect sense. And Lord knows she ain't on top of nobody's internet or TV coverage. So this is what happens.
You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
Now here you have a woman post-COVID pandemic, the thing that was completely mismanaged by her Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, to the point where it largely cost him the election, now trying to re-legislate the things that Dr. Fauci did, who was the one that was pushing him to act, and maybe if he had, might still be in office. Here we have her re-legislating what he did to try and goad him into saving American lives after it had already been proven to be a devastating pandemic. That is what we have going on right now. And you would think that a performance like that, because after you give a performance like that, you just want to go home and chill by the couch and just replay it over in your head. And of course, you don't want to see people because you just totally embarrassed yourself. You would think that after a performance like that, you might hightail it on back to Georgia, where you will find some people that would approve of such ignorance. Oh no.
In that room? No, absolutely not. I mean, everything I said is correct. It's how the American people feel. It's what we know to be a fact. It's all the evidence has been proven true. We have Jamie Raskin in there accusing us of worshiping Trump, worshiping as a convicted felon. He is a convicted felon. Well, yeah, so is George Floyd.
But that's an interesting comparison that she raises there, because I don't recall George Floyd receiving any votes for anything. I don't recall him being a nominee for a major political party. I don't recall him walking around with 80, 90 plus indictments free. I don't recall credible allegations from 26 women. I don't recall any of those things. And I certainly don't recall him saying I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any support and still rise to become the nominee a second time after having been impeached twice. I don't recall George Floyd having done any of that. Try again.
And everybody, and you all too, the media worship George Floyd. Democrats worship George Floyd. There were riots burning down the fucking country over George Floyd, and Raskin is in there saying we worship him.
Now I'm gonna take a detour right now down the George Floyd street. I didn't actually want to, but I feel like I probably should. I wonder the level of willful ignorance that it takes to refuse to see George Floyd for the symbol that he was for the many black men that had been brutalized by our criminal justice system, and to focus on him as a person, because clearly that would be an easy deflection tactic if you don't want to do any actual self-reflection, if you don't want to actually do any correction and put this country back together. That's an easy diversionary tactic to throw out. I would expect that from a child or maybe the police. But here you have somebody years later still echoing the same rhetoric. And I wonder how a person walks around like that and functions with that weight of ignorance. Now we know.
Excuse me, let me correct you, and this is really important. I don't worship, I worship God. God. And Jesus is my savior.
You know, this might be the one time that I actually will back her. I believe that she does not worship Donald Trump, because if she did, she would probably look more like this.
I don't worship President Trump. And I'm really sick and tired of the bullshit annex I have to deal with constantly from the Democrats.
I'm sick and tired of this bullshit. Jesus Christ is my savior.
So that's what we just went through in there. And then they're sitting there, they can attack my character all day long. What's his face in there, whoever was talking last was calling me insane. But yet we can't say, oh, they're attacking my character. Oh no, it's nonstop BS and annex. You want to know why? The Democrats don't have anything. They're responsible for the lockdowns, forced vaccinations, kids being forced to stay home, people committing suicide, and all the horrors that this country lived through during COVID. Fauci belongs in prison. He should be tried for mass murder, and he should be tried for crimes against humanity. That's how I feel after that hearing. That's how the American people feel.
Couple things. This is like the worst example of a group project where you out here trying to help people against their best wishes. It really, really is. Like, some people just don't want saving. And there's no better example than complaining about the lockdowns after hundreds of thousands of lives were lost due to COVID. That's what you choose to complain about. I would also like to assert that in the hierarchy of Karens, because I have said that she is in fact the Capitol Hill Karen, she has to be the final boss. She has to be the final boss. Playing the victim after you just went in there and told him he doesn't deserve to be a doctor, and asserting that your character was attacked because they're trying to correct you. This is what happens when you don't have somebody actively checking you like Jasmine Crockett was, but yet still when you're able to run roughshod through all human decency, you still will play the victim. This is what enabling behavior gets you, GOP, and I hope you're proud of yourself. You created this monster. And now there is no levels of decorum. She won't run over and then complain as if she's the victim after the fact. Congratulations. I hope you're proud of yourself. Now, the one thing I can say for her, she wasn't the only one who embarrassed themselves.
You, sir, did you cite this article at the White House because the NIH director asked you to suppress the lab leak theory?
I did not do that in response to anybody's suggestion to suppress anything. It was in response to a question that someone asked at the podium. And I did not edit any paper as shown in my official testimony. So you said about 4 or 5 things, Congressman, that were just not true.
Well, we have emails to prove it.
Well, you don't.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Do you agree that there was a push to downplay the lab leak theory?
Not on my part.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
I think most of the country would find that amazing. I still got 11 seconds.
But look at the facts. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire process.
All right, I yield back.
Can I finish the answer to you, sir?
No, because I've got a lot of questions.
Okay.
Dr. Fauci.
Here we go again with no, you can't finish the answer because I have a lot of questions that I'm not going to give you time to answer because they are rhetorical questions. This is in fact a monologue. Matter of fact, all the rest of y'all can go. The rest of y'all can leave. I needed you to come in here so people paid attention to me, because if it was just me speaking, if it was just a Comer press conference, it wouldn't even make the internet. So I needed Fauci to come in so people paid attention, and now I can get some time and just say what I need to say. Thankfully, there was some sanity in the room.
I've only been in Congress for a year and a half, but I am so sorry that you are subjected to those level of attacks and insanity. Your quote-unquote so-called science that the gentlewoman is referring to has saved millions of lives in this country and around the world, and I want to thank you for that. I also think it's important to note that if my opinion is that you are an American hero and your team has done more to save lives than all 435 members of this body on both sides of the aisle. You guys have worked not just during this pandemic, but over time to save millions of lives in this country and across the world. We lost 1.1 million American lives 1.1 million American lives, 7 million lives around the world. We were having 9/11-like events, death events daily in this country, losing 4,000, 5,000 people every single day. I was mayor during the time of the pandemic. I remember how painful it was to close businesses, to shut down schools, but how quickly we forget the pain and how scared we were as a country. We were washing our groceries as they were coming in. We were keeping seniors at a distance. The tragedy that was happening in our nursing homes. Thousands of people were dying a day, and you and your team of the best and the brightest scientists in this country and the world were doing everything that you could and working night and day to save more and more of those lives.
But unfortunately, the insanity had already been unleashed, and you can't get that crazy back in the Marjorie Taylor Greene dress.
Caitlin, that whenever somebody gets up, whether it's a news media, Fox News does it a lot, or it's somebody in the Congress who gets up and makes a public statement that I'm responsible for the deaths of X number of people because of policies or some crazy idea that I created the virus, immediately, it's like clockwork, the death threats go way up.
But what's fascinating, they got so much smoke for Dr. Fauci, but absolutely none for the man that told you.
Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light. And I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number in the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
Dr. Fauci, you talked about how we live in partisan times, a lot of misinformation, and colleagues on this body said you should be charged and found guilty. Of course, the only one that's happened to is your former boss. But the question I have is, when you saw a lot of that disinformation, whether it was we can use a disinfectant to do like a cleaning or do light in the body, or that, China's working super hard, President Xi's got it contained, all of the stuff that was being put out, were you concerned? What was your feeling at that time, working in the administration, seeing that come from the podium?
Well, I was very frustrated by that. It was very clear. I was put in a very difficult position that I didn't like, of having to contradict publicly the President of the United States. I took no great pleasure in that, but I felt it was my responsibility to preserve.
He must have thought you did a great job. He gave you a commendation right before he left.
Well, I felt it was my responsibility, as to preserve my own personal integrity and my major responsibility to the American public to tell them the truth. And if I could just take this opportunity, when I was saying that if you attack me, you attack science, I didn't mean that I am science. What I meant was that when the data showed that hydroxychloroquine does not work, and there are people saying, oh, it does, I'll give it to people, and we know it can be hurtful to them, then when you're attacking what I'm saying, that the science shows it doesn't work, and the science shows that bleach doesn't work, that when you attack that, you really are attacking science, because science has shown that it doesn't work. That's what I meant. When you're attacking me, you're attacking science.
None for the man who tried to downplay the entire thing. And if we needed any more evidence of what theater this was, of what complete bullshit this was, which was a B word that Jasmine Crockett missed. She missed bullshit. She also missed batshit crazy. And, I guess we'll wait until close to the election to get to the final boss of B's. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, even you wore a mask when the cameras went off. You didn't think we had the evidence? We got you in 4K. And this is exactly why I'm troubled. Because this ain't about science. If it was about science, they wouldn't be following the man that told them to inject disinfectant. They wouldn't be following the man that tried to downplay the whole thing. This is about spectacle. And Jasmine Crockett told you exactly what it was.
And because she mimics Trump, she is one of their top fundraisers, of course. Period. She is the 5th highest fundraising member of the Republican Party, behind those in leadership, because she is rewarded for her antics and for the destruction of our institution.
But I saw a member of this committee questioned whether or not you represent science and tried to make that in some offensive way. I just want you to know most Americans don't think she represents Congress.
And at the end of the day, that is all they care about.